When I was looking for an apartment, I knew I didn't want something that was like thousands of other spaces in the city. And then I found this apartment, which was inside a 1800s federal-style building that was once a business that sold furs, an artist's refuge, and a home for women. It had the charm and character that I was looking for, but it needed a ton of work, which I did mostly myself and with the help of a handyman. The whole restoration took about 4 years because I was just starting my architecture career, I was working late nights, and I did what I could with my budget. On top of all that, just before I purchased this apartment, my grandparents died. They were both incredibly special to me, but losing my grandmother was like losing my best friend. But despite all the loss, I was determined to infuse this place with all of the history that made it so special. And I was able to add touches from my grandmother's house that will always remind me of the time that we shared. In a way, this space is really dedicated to her. Hi, I'm Gabriel Yuri, and this is my 860 square foot New York City loft. We're in the living room space now. When I first came to see this space, it was a bit of a disaster, to be honest. Half of the walls were unfinished. People, I think, had started to try to fix things, but ran out of money and then decided that they wanted to sell. I knew immediately that I wanted to peel back some of the layers, and I had a feeling there was this beautiful brick behind the plaster, and I was right. So I knew I wanted to expose this west side wall, and we did from this end all the way to the opposite end of the apartment. And since this building was a furrier, we actually found little pockets of fur that were hidden in the wall. When I first got the space, the ceiling was lowered and it was covered in sheetrock. I knew I really wanted to expose like the old existing ceiling beams, and we did that. This floor is taller. There's higher ceiling height because it was a commercial space. So we have almost 12 feet ceilings here. I really feel like just getting that little bit of extra ceiling height by exposing the beams totally opened the space up and made it feel a lot larger. Since this is a small space, I wanted to maximize any opportunity to get extra storage. So underneath these cushions, there's additional storage here. I came up with this idea because this platform had to stay here. So I figured if it's gonna be here, we might as well add a little bit of extra storage. I wanted to retain as much of the original industrial character that already existed in the space. And I wanted to also imbue a little bit of my own more minimalist modern style. But I also had like some really great mid-century pieces that I got from my grandmother, like this Hans Wegner chair. The apartment's really a marriage between those three different ingredients. My grandmother Norlie was born in Vienna in Austria, and when she was about 12 or 13, escaped due to the Nazi occupation and went to the Czech Republic before ultimately ending up here in New York City. And she settled in Queens with my grandfather, and she found out after coming here that her father had been killed in a concentration camp. I'll always be grateful to New York City for providing that safe haven for her and allowing her to start the family which I am part of. Even before I came out, my grandmother sensed that I was queer, and she actually brought the conversation up with me, which just made it easier for me. My parents were super accepting, but my grandmother Norlie, I always felt like I could actually talk to her and divulge even more to her, partly because she also had this untraditional, non-conventional relationship in her life. My grandparents, they had an open marriage. They both had their own partners in addition to one another. They really did love each other intensely, and they were bonded for life. I may not have realized at the time, but I think she really fostered this just super tolerant, accepting environment for me that as an adult, I realized more and more was incredibly formative for me. And having these reminders everywhere of my grandparents makes me feel safe and at home. This is the kitchen. The apartment has a few really narrow spaces, and this is definitely one of them. I know for some people, a kitchen like this probably would be too small, but I'm not the world's greatest chef, so for me, it was totally fine. The layout is pretty much the same as how the apartment was when I found it. I did change the cabinet doors to these stainless steel doors and refinish the butcher block countertop. When I was restoring the place, my neighbors were also doing a renovation to their apartment and happened to be getting rid of the original tin ceiling tile. And when I realized this, I asked them, could I have it? And I was able to restore the original tile from the building into the kitchen, and I love it. The narrowness of the kitchen extends all the way to the bathroom in this hallway. Even though it's a narrow space, I tried to maximize the storage potential. So behind these curtains is all my clothes and washer dryer. This is a cool old vintage ladder, and I use it to get up to this side of the storage to get all the way up to the top. This door was here and I just loved the patina. I didn't want to touch it. The bathroom is narrow, but it's cozy, and this old clawfoot tub was already here, which was great because I love taking baths. And I just painted the walls black and left the exposed brick, so it creates this sort of kind of dark and sensuous bathroom. I also put the old tin from the building on the bathroom ceiling and just gave it a fresh coat of paint. I didn't want to cram the room with storage space, but I did put in these little corner shelves, which are very practical. And then I had this bath tray created out of the same wood so that I can have like a glass of wine or some green tea in the morning in my bath. So this is like a weird L-shaped hallway that connects the dining room to the kitchen, but I figured why not make it a little moment for art and some beautiful objects. This is the bust of my grandmother that she had in her house. And my side passion is photography, so this is a mix of my own photographs and artists that I really admire. I went to grad school in London, but I really wanted to start my design career in New York City, so after I graduated, I came back and I moved in with my grandparents. It was amazing to get to live with them. My grandmother was really one of my best friends, and I think it was hard on her for me to be so far away in London for 3 years. After a few months of living with them, my grandmother passed, and then just a few weeks later, my grandfather passed as well. I see the poetry in the fact that they passed so close to one another, and also in New York City where their romance began. It kind of spurred my search for my own space, and I was always looking with this eye of where could I incorporate the elements that I loved about their house. Now we're here in the dining room / library. I decided to hang this amazing window that I got from my former office building, Star Lehigh on the west side. They were replacing the windows with brand new ones, and I just figured these old ones are so beautiful. I wanted like a little piece of that time in my life, and so I salvaged one of them, and now it acts as the room divider between the dining room and the living room. So you have this brick build out on this side, and so I figured let's just span shelves from one end to the other and maximize the storage space on this wall with bookshelves and some cabinets below. And then also just wanted to use the full height of the space and get as much in as we could. Since the ceilings are high, we needed a library ladder, which I had custom built for the space. This is where I have my family portraits. And this was my aunt, Brenda, sadly no longer with us, but I always felt like a kinship with her. And then my grandfather, my grandmother looking very glamorous, my grandmother with her jazz singer boyfriend, in their home in Queens, where a lot of this furniture came from. And then another sort of glamour shot of her there. In the living room, there was the original heart pine floors, but in really bad shape. So we just refinished those. And then in the dining room, it was too far gone to save. So we did this herringbone gray marble. So this is another example of where things were covered up. There was this weird shape built out here. And I just figured, like, why not rip it off and see this like crazy pipe that I feel like is almost a sculpture in and of itself. These Jens Rhizome chairs I got from my grandmother. I feel like the weaving sort of complements and plays off of the herringbone floor. The table is Tom Dixon from ABC Home, and the pendant is George Nelson. It's definitely a small dining room, but I feel like I can comfortably have 4 or 5 people over for a little dinner party. All of these amazing transom windows were totally covered up, and when we ripped off the wall that was here, we discovered them, and I just thought it would be amazing to bring them back and also get some of this southern light to come in to the bedroom. And these pocket doors were in my grandmother's house. She was not formally trained as a designer, but I feel like she just had this incredible design sense, and she sketched these doors out and had them built. And as a kid, I always loved seeing them in the house. It was a little bit of a challenge reconfiguring the hardware to fit into this thinner wall. So we devised this steel header that kind of hides the hardware. And now I think it works pretty well. So this is the bedroom. The exposed brick wall comes all the way through to the end of the apartment here. And I decided to leave this wall super minimal because I feel like the texture of the brick is just so beautiful. The bed is a custom design, and I just couldn't find anything on the market that I really loved, so decided to design something myself. The chairs on either side are Arthur Umanoff, also from my grandmother. These sconces are from a salvage place that I found on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. They're actually industrial naval lights. I didn't mind seeing the exposed electric conduit. The pendants in this room are also just a little bit of a nod to the industrial history of the building, as well as just leaving the air conditioning units exposed. I didn't mind. A lot of people, I think, were a little surprised that I wanted to do that. I was kind of happy to have them exposed and contribute to this industrial feeling of the space. I went to grad school in London at the Architectural Association, and I had found this door in Oxfordshire, and I was using it there as my dining table, but I really didn't want to let it go, so I brought it back with me, and now it's my closet door for the bedroom. I wanted like a little space for books and for objects in the room, and so I copied something that my grandmother used to do all the time, just stacking bricks or blocks and having wood cut to size, and I think it's just such a smart, efficient solution. So I made this sort of corner shelving unit here. From an early age, I was interested in architecture and design. I would play The Sims, but I wasn't really interested in the people. I just wanted to build the houses for the people, and I would have these old AD issues, and I would see houses that I loved, and I'd recreate them in the game. I think with the design of this space, I was telling multiple stories. One of them, of course, being the history of the building, this incredible legacy of industrial New York, and then also my grandparents' story, but also my own sort of design aesthetic. And it was definitely a challenge to blend all these different things together, but I'd like to think that it came together in a harmonious way. I love having the reminders of my grandparents, and makes me feel like I'm still connected to them.